Self as context. I've had a on and off relationship with that term. I thought I understood it, and then I didn't, and then I thought I did, and then I don't know. Um, Now I feel like I get it, and I feel like this is different. Like I get it. And this time I feel like I get it because it's no longer like a descriptive verbal thing. Like I get it as self as context are just three words. They're just three sounds. Observer, self. They're just sounds. There's words, right? Saying, and can you notice that? That's just a thought. That's just a sound. That's not it. But I get it now. Like it points to something. And it points to something that I can observe. I feel like I get the observer self, not because I think it, but because I can observe it as so. Kinda. It's weird, but I feel like I understand why it's called self as context. Like that name was really fucking odd to me for a really long time, but now it makes sense. So anyways, I wanted to share, this all happened in the kind of like the last month, and I wanted to share three things that happened for me that I think was really helpful in that, in hopes that it might be helpful for some of you out there to understand this kind of elusive and tricky process. So, three things that I did. The first thing that I did was I asked myself, who's noticing that 4 times a day, every day for a month, which is, now that I think about it, kind of intense. But basically, the backstory behind that is, so I work at PsychFlex. I also work at the Institute for Better Health, and I do user testing on MindGrapher. And I've been looking at different ways that we can orient questions that either look at really interesting ways of collecting data or that has an interesting effect as an intervention in itself. And so I was trying different ways of like adding questions that less intended to take data and more intended to practice a certain skill, like using MindGrapher and using ecological momentary assessment, or like just asking questions within a day, multiple answering question sets. If you know what experience sampling method is, where you ask a set of questions, and a set of questions every couple of hours, like that's what I was doing. But instead of asking questions about like, what were you doing and how are you doing, how are you feeling, I was asking like, I can notice who's noticing that. And then I was supposed to rate on a scale of 1 to 7 how much that was true. And that was really profound. In the first week, I was mostly just kind of like 1s and 2s and 3s, maybe. Like I could kind of, but I didn't really know. The second week, I was more at like 2s and 3s and 4s. And the kind of third and fourth week, it was really just kind of cementing the work that the first and second week had done. But even by the first week, I was starting to really kind of get it. Like, oh, this is not what I thought it was. Like, this is how I'm able to observe what I thought it was, right? Like, I was like, it's really interesting. Like, by the third and fourth week, I was able to get this kind of continuity where there was like, there I was back then over there, experiencing that, noticing those things. And then here I am now, right here, right now, noticing and experiencing these things. And there's a kind of continuity between the self that is noticing right now and the self that I was observing 3 hours ago and the self that I was observing 6 hours ago and the self that I was observing 9 years ago. And that kind of continuity of self is going to expand 3 hours in the future and 6 and 9 and however many years in the future. And that, like, there's a kind of consciousness that contains all of that. And like, that's one way of experiencing or connecting that verbal behavior of self to that. Like, I am that container of all of that, the context of me, I guess. I don't know. And it's also funny now that like I feel like I get it more, like seeing how different people have conceptualized that term, like transcendent self, and I'm like, oh, I guess yeah. And then they're like self as perspective, and I'm like, yeah, I really get that one. And like self as context, I'm like, okay, self as container, I get it, Like I can see how the different ACT people are trying to conceptualize it in different terms because it like makes more sense now, the kind of experience thing. So anyways, if you have Psychflex, you can create a custom question in the dashboard. So you go to psychflex.plap.io/dashboard. That link I think that link is right, but I might be wrong. But you can email customer service because I work at customer service, so I'd be happy to give that to you. But yeah, that's the kind of back end that you can access for your profile, where you can upload custom questions, and so you can do that if you want to test that on yourself and send assessments to yourself. But you also don't need to, especially if you don't have Psychflex. I think you could just do this with a piece of paper and a pen. You would just need to set up timers every 3 hours and like be consistent with it and see. But it's also really quick. Like you can do this in 15 seconds. Like you can do this right now. You can do it in 10. Like, can I notice who's noticing that? And if you're at like a 2 or a 1 or a 7, or I think I only was at like a 7 once, like in the whole month span. And then you just write down your notes. Looking at the data wasn't actually that helpful, but evaluating, was I able to kind of notice, I feel like I understood this? Is there something that's happening here or no? Like that evaluation process was helpful as well. And seeing how that kind of increase across time. Okay, so that was the first thing I did that was very helpful for me. Ask yourself who's noticing that just a fuck ton of times. Another thing that was really kind of helpful for me is, and this is also kind of through my work through Psychflex, I've been looking a lot recently at the Observer Self exercise in ACT. It's in the original ACT book here. It's also in the second edition. And so just through the work, I've found myself first just going through the exercise and like hearing it, and then also like needing to practice recording it myself and like put it in my own words. And just like a couple repetitions with that exercise has really kind of cemented and glued everything together that this kind of experience of noticing who's noticing that has helped facilitate. So I can recommend that. Like the first time I listened through the exercise, I was like, wow, okay, shoot. Like that's making a lot of sense. But then after the exercise, I felt like I like kind of lost it. Like I was like, I don't really know. I couldn't go back to like what I was experiencing, and I was just kind of like lost in the words, right? But then I did it again a couple of days later, and yeah, that really kind of helped me keep my finger on the pulse as to what it is we're kind of talking about here. So that was really helpful, and I can recommend that. The second thing is just kind of going through the Observer Self exercise. The last thing, and I don't think you need to do this. I think the first two things are probably enough. But the last thing for me that was really helpful for me was reading a paper. But like having a verbal understanding as to why nonverbal understanding is important made me a lot more receptive to understanding things from a nonverbal perspective. And so the paper that I read that was really influential is called Behavioral Epistemology Includes Nonverbal Knowing, and it's by Stephen Hayes, and it's written a while ago. But actually, before I read that, what influenced me before that was in this book, Mindfulness, Acceptance, and Positive Psychology. And there's a section so Robin Walser wrote a chapter called Love and the Human Condition, and which is a beautiful name. And then in the chapter, she has this section where she talks about knowing the world. And she says there's at least two ways of knowing our world, verbally and experientially. And so she kind of describes the kind of difference. And then she has this other section called Finding the Experiencer. That really helped me set up in a way that was less technical and less philosophical, more just kind of like accessible, this distinction between verbal knowing and nonverbal knowing. And then I read that Stephen Hayes paper, Behavioral Epistemology Includes Nonverbal Knowing, and that really hit it home how nonverbal knowledge and nonverbal knowing is critical for functional contextualism to operate, and it's critical for us to be able to call ourselves pragmatists, where we focus on what works. Because how do you evaluate what works, right? Do you do that, which is language and language and language and language. Well, we can know that this is true because of these facts of reality. And when we study this, these are objective things. And if we're not going to do that, if we're going to maintain a perspective that science creates verbal products that operate under the same kind of contingencies of human behavior as any kind of human behavior, then, including RFT though, right? Like I'm not trying, yeah. Anyways, if we're just gonna say that, knowledge and learning and understanding is a kind of behavioral process, then, we need that kind of nonverbal knowing. I'm not gonna try and explain the paper here, but what I will say is what that paper left me realizing is that nonverbal knowing is really important, and it makes sense as to why it's so critical in ACT. Like, to describe nonverbal knowing really quick, like if you are able to see red, then you could see that these Lego bricks have a really beautiful red hue, right? And if I never showed you these Lego bricks and I was like, I'm holding a Lego brick in my head, it's a 2x4, and it's this really beautiful shiny red color, you might be able to imagine what this Lego brick looks like, and specifically the color of the Lego brick, without me showing it to you. But that's because you've seen the color red. If you're colorblind and you've never seen red, or you just never have seen red in general, then I can't verbally convey to you with words what red looks like unless you've seen it, or unless you've had like something that was really, really close, right? Like, I don't know, what is red between like yellow and it's like orange, and I don't know. Like, I'm not going to try and explain it. Another example though that I can explain better is I've never had a blueberry. I've never eaten a blueberry. When I was a young kid, I just never wanted to eat one, and then I kind of got older and I was like, yeah, I just don't feel like I need to. And then now it's kind of like a fun little thing. It's like, I've never eaten a blueberry, and I kind of just am enjoying the experience of wondering, but never going to do it. I was just like, I will someday, but not now. Anyways, though, I've spent some time, because I think this is a fun example, I've spent some time trying to understand verbally what a blueberry tastes like. And from my understanding, blueberries they have a fruity taste, and they are sometimes slightly tart, I heard. They have a floral, earthy taste. I don't know what that means. I asked ChatGPT, okay, what does it mean that a blueberry has a floral taste? And they were like, well, it tastes like flowers. And I was like, what does it mean that it has a fruity taste? And they were like, well, it tastes like fruit. And what does red look like? Well, it looks like red, right? Like, I don't know. Like, that's what it's saying to me, right? So I have a vague idea. I have an idea of what fruit tastes like because I eat plenty of fruit, right? But yeah, I don't know. So that kind of, no matter how many verbal descriptions I have of what a blueberry tastes like, I don't know experientially what a blueberry tastes like. And that's what a lot of the ACT work is getting out of the kind of verbal explanation of the blueberry and actually just eating the blueberry, like getting the experience itself, right? You can follow this metaphor with anything, right? Like, or this example with anything, like, with not anything actually, a lot of things though, right? Like, I can try and explain to you what love feels like, but if you've never, and if I had the understanding, I could tell you every neurotransmitter that would fire and everything that we understand about the physiological sensations that come up and the whatever, right? But that doesn't mean that you know the experience of what it's like to love another human being. When you look at like sports performance, right? Like these Olympic athletes or whatever it is, I've been reading about ACT applied to like sports. It's been really interesting. And yeah, your mind does not know how to play football or badminton or swim laps, right? Your body does, right? But it's this kind of, no matter how much you kind of think about it, that isn't how you do it, right? And in fact, if you attend too much to how you think about it, it can get in the way of you being able to do it. And it's the same thing with being able to like sing a beautiful song. And I mean, I don't sing, but I'm assuming. I can tell you it has a lot to do with filming videos like these. Right now, I'm not thinking too much about it, but sometimes I'll get really in my head when I'm trying to film something. And man, I go from articulate and able to speak English to non-articulate and not able to speak English. And which is funny because like that is literally verbal behavior, but there's this non-verbal component to verbal behavior of not evaluating and judging, but just kind of like this kind of like engaging aspect of it, right? And you can find parallels with other like traditions of like Wu Wei or like non-doing in Taoism. But like, I don't know. I'm not trying to make that. I'm not trying to say that's the same. I don't know. I'm not going to say that it is. I don't know. But anyways, it's just to say that the third kind of thing that reading that chapter and reading that paper gave me was an appreciation of nonverbal knowledge and knowing that nonverbal knowledge is not the same as verbal. I'm going to give one more example and then I'll wrap this up because I know we're getting 15 minutes. I train parkour. I've trained parkour for 11 years. I've competed on television and like some like national competition and stuff like that called World Chase Tag. I've been doing it a good amount of time. And we have a group here in Philadelphia that I train parkour with on Saturdays. And like when I'm studying sports performance and stuff like that, and like how important this kind of loss of self-referential processing is, and just kind of like really being in tune with your body and with what you're doing and engaging in the skills that you've practiced 100 million times or whatever it is, and connecting that to this kind of novel environment, not as something that you're thinking about you're doing, but you're just kind of in the moment, and then your body knows how to do that kind of thing. Like that is something that I've been reading about, and it's been really cool. But that's like when I read about it, I get a verbal understanding of it, right? But like these athletes who will sometimes show up, they don't like some of these people, their lives are parkour, right? Or like a huge significant part of what they think about and what they do and what they care about is just parkour. And I know they're not reading books on acceptance and commitment therapy for sports performance or mindfulness-based performance enhancement or something like that. Mindful sports performance enhancement. I don't know what the program's called, but like they're not reading about these things. And clearly I wasn't reading that much about the MSPE, I think it's called. I was reading more about MAP, mindfulness and acceptance. I don't know. Actually, clearly I wasn't reading that much about that one either because I don't know the name. But anyways, the book I was reading was called Mindfulness and Acceptance for Sports Performance. And I would tell you the names of the authors, but it was in Swedish, I think, or they're from Denmark. So I'm not going to try. But yeah, like it's given me a respect for, like, I know they're not reading these books, but they're doing the thing. And they can do it better than I can because doing the thing is not learning about the thing. It's not talking about the thing. It's not reading about the thing. It's not thinking about the thing. It's not meditating on the thing. It's doing the thing. And they've done it. And they've done it a lot. And this kind of nonverbal knowledge they have, and I don't, because I just don't have the experience. I haven't eaten that blueberry as much as they have. And so that's really cool. That's really, really cool. And just that also has kind of loosened the system for me and made it more accessible to me to access this kind of self as context work because I hold valid and hold as important and care about this kind of nonverbal way of understanding, knowing things, and doing things. So, yeah. Now I feel like I get it more, which is interesting because maybe I'll be getting fused with that thought and I'll just build a self-concept there. Oh my God. But anyways, I hope some of y'all respond to this post because no one likes posting in the listserv and then no one says anything. So hopefully someone has thoughts. We'll share things. Hopefully this helps someone. And if not, hopefully it was just amusing. So thank you so much for your time and I'll see you on the listserv.